I was a husband blinded by love until I uncovered the dual betrayal by my wife and my most trusted business partner. This is not just a tale of a marriage falling apart, it's a complex web of trust, loyalty, and retribution. Welcome to the Butterfly Tumblr Radio channel. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and give it a thumbs up. I got angry and threatened to leave him for another guy, but he agreed and later divorced me. I thought I could threaten to leave my husband and make him beg me to stay, but he divorced me immediately. My life is collapsing right now, and I am responsible. I've been crying profusely for the past few days. The last few weeks have been the most devastating time in my life. My husband and I had a heated argument, and I threatened to leave if he tried anything funny. Guess what, guys? He did not hesitate to serve me with first papers. Hello Reddit. My name is Elena. I am a 32-year-old hotel manager. My husband's name is Nathan. He is a 33-year-old businessman. My husband and I have been married 6 years. Nathan and I first met back in high school. He was one of the top students at school. I got close to him so that he could tattoo me some things I found difficult. From there we became friends and eventually began dating. And now we've been married for 6 years. Nathan and I have been in love since the first day we met. He's always been there for me when I'm in trouble. But right now I've turned Nathan into a beast, a mere threat, and it got into his head. He wants to divorce me. He kicked me out of the house in the middle of the night. It was late at night and I didn't know where to go. That day, all of the neighbors were in their homes and I wasn't close enough to anyone to seek assistance. Nathan made me spend the night outside in the cold. I was freezing and begged him to open the door, but he ignored me. Guys, the weather that day was not pleasant. Nathan wants to divorce me after punishing me by making me sleep in the cold. No, this could happen. I would do everything in my power to change his mind. I cannot allow another woman to take my place in Nathan's life. My husband cannot abandon our 6-year marriage over a mere threat. Yes, I know I cheated on him and I refuse to deny it. But Nathan cannot divorce me because I would literally go broke and empty. Throughout our married lives, we have lived on his money, not mine. Imagine him removing that privilege from me. But honestly, as I'm speechless and have no idea how to fix this. I'd like you all to give me advice on what to do and how I can persuade him to change his mind. Yes, I still love my husband and would like us to reconcile. I really want to repair our marriage. I promise I've turned a new leaf and I'm willing to do anything to persuade Nathan to change his mind. But right now I don't think he's ready to hear what I have to say. I won't even lie. Guys, Nathan and I shared a comfortable living situation, regardless of my monthly income. He provides for all of my needs. He paid all of the bills and never let me spend it on household expenses. Yes, guys, Nathan adored me so much. Sometimes I would tell myself that I didn't deserve someone like him because of how he treated me. But despite all of this, my husband and I disagreed on one point. I wanted to be a hotel manager. My husband hated it from the beginning, but I loved it. After 2 years of unemployment, I accepted a job working in a hotel. I couldn't think of anything meaningful to do. I sent several emails to different companies but received no response. At some point Nathan told me to stop, but I was determined to do something. I despised being idle, doing nothing to balance it all. I was simply bored, doing nothing at home. Nathan gave me a large sum of money to go on vacation with my friends anywhere I wanted, just to relieve my boredom. We went clubbing, had several dates, hung out with friends and attended numerous family events together. But then I wasn't pleased. I wanted to do something. I didn't want to spend all day at home and only go out at night to a club. I had always aspired to be a career woman, not just a housewife. So guys, after our marriage I couldn't find work. I stayed at home for 2 years before receiving one from a friend. Megan was a friend from college. We connected 2 years after graduating. Apparently we lost contact after graduation because she moved to the United States to further her education. When she returned to town, she contacted me and we met at a restaurant. We talked about a variety of topics and shared funny stories. It was there that I told her about my inability to find work. Megan didn't believe me because I was attractive and didn't see the point in stressing myself if my husband hadn't complained. Everyone couldn't understand why I needed a job, but it was my decision and I didn't give up. After much discussion with Megan, she agreed to do something for me because I was desperately looking for work. So I waited about a week before Megan posted a job vacancy. For me, it was a new hotel and they needed staff. All other positions were filled, except for that of a receptionist. Of course, I was delighted to give it a try. Megan, and especially my husband, were not supportive, but I was determined to get it. I sent a few emails and was able to get the job. I was overjoyed and felt a huge relief, but I had no idea the job would cost so much. Getting that job marked the beginning of my infidelity. I became so preoccupied with my job that I stopped seeing my husband. The first 3 years on the job were quite difficult. I needed to get used to getting up early and going to work, but I got used to it, worked extremely hard and became comfortable in the environment. My boss commended me on several occasions for my hard work along the way. Nathan had no choice but to accept my new job and offer me his complete support. Nathan was a good man and I let him slip through my fingers. Like I previously stated, my infidelity occurred when I began working at the hotel. It began when my boss invited me to a closed-door party at his home with his friends. He wanted to reward me for all of my hard work at the time. My boss was single and not in a relationship. Then I went to the party without Nathan knowing. I gave him the excuse of being on the night shift. The party was primarily attended by men with a few women. The night became so heated that I drank a lot. But I could handle my alcohol. I remember everything that happened that night. It was a bittersweet memory for me. The best part of that night was the fun I had at the party and with my boss. The bitter part is what I'm currently going through that night. One thing led to another, and I found myself making out with my boss and left it. My boss and I were the only ones remaining at his house. He offered to drop me off at my house, but I declined, insisting on staying longer. After a few minutes I couldn't hold myself back and went over to kiss him. It got heated and we made out all night. I'm not proud of what I did. I wish I could erase that memory from my brain. That's not all, guys. I awoke in the middle of the night to find my boss missing from the room. He left early that morning, leaving some cash on the table and a written note telling me where to leave the keys. I felt so embarrassed and regretted everything at the time. I got angry and left the apartment. A few weeks later, my boss called me into his office and handed me a piece of paper. Guess what, guys? It was a promotion letter. I was promoted to manager. Apparently, the former manager resigned, leaving the space vacant, so he gave me the promotion. Given my rank at the time, I was unqualified for the manager position. In fact, I had several senior colleagues. The promotion shocked everyone, even to my husband Nathan. He suspected there was something fishy going on, but I was able to persuade him otherwise. Of course, it was because my boss and I had a relationship that he offered me the position. Following the promotion at work, my affair with my boss became consistent. We even went on a few dates, picnics, and to clubs. My husband, on the other hand, complained about how demanding my job is. I was never around. It caused a lot of problems for us, but I was still able to hide my infidelity from him. No one suspected my boss or I. We once went on a vacation together, far away from town. My husband had no idea. I gave him an excuse. I was going to see a friend who was ill and needed company. That was the only plausible explanation I could come up with. So after a few months, my boss took a trip with some close friends. The trip was to last 2 months. I wasn't happy about it at the time because I'd grown accustomed to his presence. My boss assured me that he would not stay up that long and instructed me to take care of everything while he was away. Of course I did. After all, I was the hotel's manager. He left for the trip, and after a few weeks I was already missing him, but I managed to make it through. A month later I was still waiting for my boss, but by then I had already met someone. His name was Alex, and I met at the hotel when he was having trouble with the receptionist at the counter. There was a mix-up, which drew my attention. I was able to resolve the situation, and we became friends from there. Apparently Alex was a foreigner in town. He was on a week-long business trip. He reserved the available hotel, which was the one I worked at. So at that point Alex and I became friends. We talked longer on the phone because I didn't want any of the employees to suspect anything. I couldn't concentrate because I was constantly on my phone chatting with Alex. At this point my husband suspected that something was very wrong. My late night calls and chats became more frequent, and I was constantly on the phone smiling and giggling. On several occasions he asked why I was always smiling at my phone screen, but I explained that it was just a random joke on the internet. Nathan would ask me to share so he could laugh, but I would always find an excuse that always annoyed him. Alex and I started seeing each other outside of the hotel. We booked another hotel, and I was confident that I would not run into anyone. I knew the new hotel was our hangout spot. Alex was filling in for my boss while my husband couldn't. I didn't know very much about Alex. All I wanted was a companion to fill in for my boss until he returned. Alex's stay was supposed to be for a week, but he kept postponing it because of me. He wanted more time with me. Alex knew I was married but had no idea about my relationship with my boss. We saw each other until my boss returned from his trip. At the time I was in a tight spot. I was glad to see my boss again after all. That is all I wanted. But then again there was Alex. I was starting to get used to Alex before my boss returned. I was very confused at the time. I had to keep both men apart so as not to complicate things. My boss and I resumed our normal interactions, but I limited the amount of time I spent with him. I had just been cut in the middle of 3 men. Nathan was one of my husbands, and the two of us had an affair. None of them knew each other. I did well in the game. Not until I was double playing. Yes, guys, I was. My relationship with Alex blossomed, and we planned to elope in his countryside. Just took excellent care of me. It felt like I was falling in love for the first time. I wasn't sure what he used on me. But one thing I am certain of is that he was an excellent writer. He suggested that I accompany him to his town and promised to look after me there, but the only thing holding us back was money. I devised a plan and began extorting money from my husband, which included taking some bundles without his permission. This continued for a few days, and my husband began to complain about the missing bundles. I denied knowing anything about it, and he said nothing. I thought I was smart, but I had no idea. My husband had hired a private investigator to watch me. The private investigator followed me everywhere. I went, taking pictures of me, Alex, and even my boss. My husband confirmed his suspicions that I was cheating on him, but he kept quiet. I stole the bundles from him. I transferred it to Alex so he could save enough money for us to leave the country. After confirming my travel plans, I went to my boss's office and broke up with him. I lied to him because my husband was becoming suspicious of me, and I didn't want to implicate him. I also told him to stop seeing us and concentrate solely on work. My boss was not pleased with what I told him, but I stood firm and made it clear to him he wasn't buying it at the time. So I walked out of the office. I concentrated on my job and acted normally. Alex logged out of the hotel where I worked and stayed somewhere far away. So back at the house I packed my bags a little so that my husband wouldn't suspect anything. Alex and I planned our trip and purchased tickets in advance. Everything was moving along nicely until one day my boss requested to see him. My boss warned me not to end our affair, but I refused. He even increased my monthly income, so I could change my mind, but I did not. At the time, I had decided that I would only be with Alex. A few weeks later, Alex was set to leave the country that week. I arranged and packed everything I needed. I was in a very happy mood. It wasn't until the day before we left that my husband approached me and I was cheating on him. I was shocked at first, but I quickly recovered and denied it that night. It was after 11 p.m. He yelled loudly and demanded to know, but I said nothing. We then got into a heated argument over his allegations. He pulled out a stack of photos of me and my affair partners. Nathan told me that I was the one stealing money from him and that I needed to return every penny I had taken, or else I wouldn't find it funny. I immediately told him he couldn't do anything and that if he tried anything funny, I would leave him and he would never see me again. My husband dragged me out of the house, pulling my arms closer to him and telling me that he would make it easy for me and that there was no need to threaten anyone. Nathan slammed the door and locked me out. I banged on the door and asked to open it, but he didn't listen. I left in the cold. The weather was not pleasant. My hands and feet were both frozen. I had to rush to the garage to spend the night the next morning. I could barely walk. I begged Nathan to open the door, but he refused. He did not open the door until he was ready to leave for work. When he came out, he shut it immediately. I followed my husband, pleading with him to forgive me until he got into his car. I even went as far as staying at the gate to prevent him from driving away, but Nathan didn't mind running me over. I dashed out of the way when I saw him approaching at high speed. I immediately considered what I should do after my husband left. Luckily, I had my phone with me. I attempted to call Alex, but his line did not connect. At that point, I considered going to the hotel to see him and tell him about the new development. I was still in my 90th that morning and didn't mind showing up at the hotel where he was staying. I went to the hotel, approached the receptionist and called the room number to notify Alex of my arrival. Guess what the receptionist told me? Guys, the lady behind the counter informed me that Alex checked out around 4 a.m. I wasn't sure she had heard the room number correctly, so I repeated it for her. She then informed me that the room was empty and Alex had checked out. I was so upset with myself that I couldn't believe what I was hearing. At that point, I dropped to my knees and screamed. The receptionist alerted security and I was instructed to leave the premises. I wasn't sure what to do. Alex ran off with the money I stole from my husband. He tricked me into eloping with him while using me to steal money from my husband. Now I'm in a lot of debt and my husband promised me I'd pay everything down to the last penny. I can't even call the figures, because there were so many. I didn't believe Alex was a fraudster. I honestly don't know what to do right now because my husband isn't being friendly with me. I tried going over to his house to plead with him, but he isn't listening. Megan was very disappointed when she learned the news. She told me right in front of my face and refused to help me. I pleaded with her to let me spend a few days with her before returning, but she refused. She turned away from me and did not look back. I never expected this from her. Megan was the last person I imagined could do that to me. Right now, as I write this, I am in tears. The whole divorce process is taking its toll on me. I really want to get back with my husband. I hope he changes his mind. Update hello. Guys, before I begin, I'd like to thank everyone for their comments and patience. I sincerely appreciate it and do not take any of them for granted. I also appreciate the negative comments. Honestly, I accept full responsibility for everything. Yes, I know I've kept you all waiting for too long without providing an update on how things went. I'm sorry. Guys, I've been really down. I've been doing my best to organize my life, but it's proving difficult. Most especially when I don't have the money to answer the question of whether Nathan and I have parted ways. Yes, we did. The court case was not in my favor. I spent my last penny to hire a lawyer for the court case, but things did not go as planned. The divorce was finalized and we parted ways. I tried to involve a close friend of his if he could change his mind and forgive me, But he was determined to get a divorce. And now I've got nothing. I ran to my boss for help, but he chased me out of the office and filed a restraining order against me. Due to how frequently I visited his office, even after a divorce, I begged him to give me any job, even doing the dishes, but he refused and called security to throw me out. I felt humiliated. I've never been so humiliated in my life. How could my boss turn his back to me? After all, what have we shared together? Do those moments we spent together mean nothing to him? Without being told, I've concluded that he used me to have fun. I was so stupid for offering myself so cheaply to him. I should not have dropped my guard. My affair partner, Alex, on the other hand, scammed me out of my money, and I haven't heard from him since the last time we planned to elope somewhere far away from here. The thought of that is driving me insane. As a result, I've been getting insufficient sleep. I thought I could find him, but I couldn't. He blocked me across all platforms and left no trace. Alex really did me wrong. Alex cheated me and stole from my husband. I deeply regretted it. I was blinded by shallow love. My ex-husband, on the other hand, did not want to see me. Nathan made certain to recover all of the money I stole from him. I'm selling all of my expensive outfits and my card. To make it up, he confiscated my credit card and took my life savings. Guys, I couldn't stop crying. I am currently penniless, feeding from hand to mouth. I cannot get over my husband. I've been stalking him since our last divorce. As I write this, Nathan's engagement is coming up in a few months. He's already moved on quickly, and I'm here looking so unkempt, not even presentable enough to date someone. My life is currently a total mess. I am so ashamed of myself. Here's the next story. I stared at the laptop screen, my jaw clenched. Rebecca's GPS tracker blinked, indicating that she was at a trendy cafe downtown. It was 9 p.m. on a Tuesday. She was supposed to be in yoga. Damn it, Rebecca. I mustn't rubbed my temples. I suspected something was wrong. For weeks, late-night classes, constant texting and increasing emotional distance. But seeing concrete proof made my stomach turn. My phone broke. Rebecca sent a text. Class is running late. Do not wait. I nearly laughed at the blatant lie. Instead, I grabbed my keys and went out. It was time to find out what my darling wife was really doing. The cafe was dimly lit and tried so hard to be trendy. I parked across the street and watched she sat at an outdoor table laughing. I touched the arm of a guy I'd never seen before. My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles were white. I wanted to storm over there and confront them both, but I needed more information. Before making my move, I took a few photos on my phone and drove home, my mind racing. Who was he? How long was this going on? Most importantly, what was I going to do about it? Back at our house, the obscenely large house that I worked so hard to afford, I poured myself a scotch and settled into my home office time to dig. It did not take long to find him online. Oliver Blackwood. The Tita is a local celebrity yoga instructor who has a carefully curated Instagram feed filled with shirtless photos and inspirational quotes. What a joke. I was still scrolling through his social media feeds when I heard Rebecca's key in the door. Showtime. Lucas. She called out, "You still awake?" I stepped outside the office, scotch in hand. "Hello, hun. How is yoga?" She faltered for a brief moment before regaining her composure. "Oh great. Tonight's class was extremely challenging." I bet I said, keeping my tone neutral. "You must be exhausted. After all that effort." Rebecca's eyes narrowed slightly. "What is that supposed to mean?" I shrugged and took a sip of scotch. "Nothing. Just having a conversation." She stared at me for a long time, then appeared to relax or yell. "Well, I am exhausted. I'm going to take a shower and go to bed." "Sweet dreams," I said, watching her leave. When I heard the shower start, I returned to my research. I needed proof. Real proof that could stand up in court. Make no mistake. I was not going to let Rebecca walk away with half of everything I had built. The next morning I made some calls and scheduled a meeting with Frank Sutherland, a private investigator, who came highly recommended. We met in a nondescript diner, away from prying up eyes. Frank was a grizzled man in his 50s, with sharp eyes that saw everything. "So, Mr. Hawthorne," he said after I had explained the situation, "do you want proof of your wife's infidelity?" "That's correct," I replied, "concrete evidence. Photos, video, or whatever it takes." He nodded slowly. "And what are you going to do with this evidence once you have it?" I met his gaze steadily. "I will do whatever is necessary to protect myself and my assets." Frank's lips curled into a faint smile. "Understood. I will get started right away. But I should warn you, Mr. Hawthorne, sometimes these investigations produce unexpected results. I hope you are ready for whatever I find." "I am prepared for anything," I replied firmly. "Please get me what I need." As I left the diner, my phone received a text message from my best friend and business partner. "Max drank tonight." I hesitated before responding, to the usual position at 8. I needed to talk to someone about all of this. Max, more than anyone else, was someone I could trust. We've been through too much together to doubt him now. When I arrived, the bar was crowded, and I saw Max at our usual table, in the back. He waved me over to the whiskey, which was already waiting. "You look like hell," he said. As I sat down, I chuckled amusingly. "Do you feel it too?" I took a long sip of whiskey, enjoying the burn. "It's Rebecca." Max's expression became serious. "What's happening?" I told him everything. My suspicions. Following Rebecca to the cafe and ordering the pie, he listened intently, his brow furrowed in concern. After I finished, he said, "Jesus, Lucas, I'm very sorry. What are you planning to do?" "I don't know yet, I admit, but I'm not going to let her get away with it. I've worked far too hard to let her and her boy toy take me for what I'm worth." Max nodded slowly. "Just take care. Okay. Do not act trashly. Perhaps there is an explanation or explanations." I cut him off. Anger has flared for what she was lying to my face. Sneaking behind my back, he held up his hands to plate Lee. "I am just saying, wait until you have all of the facts before making any major decisions. You have a lot to lose here, Lucas." I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down. "You're correct. I know. I cannot believe she would do this to me. After everything we've gone through together." Max reached across the table and clasped my shoulder. "Whatever happens, I have your back. Do you know that?" I managed a small smile. "Yeah, I understand. Thank you, man." As I drove home that night, Max's words rang in my head. "Be careful. Do not act rashly." But with each passing day and every lie Rebecca told, I felt my grip slipping. Something needed to give. The following week passed in a blur of suspicion and barely contained rage. I went through the motions at work, but my thoughts were constantly on Rebecca and her betrayal. Frank provided regular updates, including more yoga classes that were anything but clandestine, as well as meetings in remote cafes and parks. He finally sent me the message I had been waiting for. "We have what you need. Meet me at the diner." I made an excuse to leave work early and rushed to meet Frank. He was waiting in a corner booth with a thick manila envelope on the table in front of him. As I sat down, he said simply, "It's all here, photos and video telephone records. Your wife has been having an affair with this guy named Oliver for at least 3 months." With shaking hands, I reached for the envelope, but Frank held it back. "Are you sure you want to see this?" he questioned, his expression grave. "Once you do, there's no turning back." I met his gaze steadily. I am sure he nodded. Before handing over the envelope, I opened it. bracing myself for what I was going to see. The first photograph hit me like a punch in the gut. Rebecca and Oliver shared a passionate embrace outside a Sion motel. I quickly flipped through the remaining images, each one searing itself into my mind. They're laughing over dinner, walking hand in hand through the park, kissing in his car. Frank added quietly, "There's also video, but I'll let you decide if you want to watch it." I shook my head and pushed everything back into the envelope. "This is sufficient." I took out my checkbook. "Thank you for your efforts, Mr. Sutherland. I assume this covers everything." He glanced at the amount and nodded again. "Are you sure you don't need anything else?" "No," I replied, standing up. "I have what I need." I drove home dazed. My mind raced. Now I had proof. What was I going to do with this? Confront Rebecca? Go straight to a divorce attorney? I needed time to think and plan my next move carefully. But when I pulled into our driveway and saw Rebecca's car already there, something inside me snapped all of the hurt, betrayal, and anger I'd been suppressing rose to the surface now. With careful planning, it was time for a reckoning. I stormed into the house and discovered Rebecca in the kitchen chopping vegetables for dinner. She looked up with a smile that quickly faded when she noticed my expression. "Lucas, what is wrong?" I laughed bitterly. "What is wrong? Why aren't you telling me?" "Rebecca, how was yoga tonight?" She peeved slightly but maintained her composure. "That was fine. Why are you cutting that?" I snarled and slammed the envelope down on the counter. "I know everything about Oliver. About everything." Rebecca's eyes widened in shock before narrowing. "Have you been spying on me?" "Damn right. I did." I shot back, which was a good thing. Otherwise I'd still be unaware that my wife was deceiving her yoga instructor. Rebecca protested, raising her voice. "You do not understand." "Oh, I understand completely." I cut off. "I understand that. Well, I worked my tail off to give us this life. You squandered it all for some narcissistic, mystic, pretty boy." Rebecca's expression hardened. "Perhaps if you had paid half as much attention to me as you do to your valuable company, I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere." I reeled back as if she had slapped me. "So it is my fault? Are you blaming me for your decision to cheat?" "I am not blaming you," she said. Her tone softens. "I'm just saying we've been drifting apart for a while. Lucas, Oliver, he makes me feel alive again." I shook my head with disgust. "Spare me the justifications. I do not want to hear it. I want you out of the house tonight." Rebecca's eyes widened with panic. "What, Lucas?" "I am confident we can work this out. We can seek counseling. Try to. There is nothing to work out." I replied coldly. "We're finished. I'll have the divorce papers drawn up in the morning." "You can't simply throw me out," she protested. "This is also my home. I have rights." I laughed heartily. "Rights? You forfeited any rights you possessed the moment you decided to cheat. Do you want rights? Talk to my lawyer." I turned to leave, but Rebecca grabbed my arm. "Lucas, please. I apologize. This was a mistake. I love you." I jerked back from her touch. "Don't say you love me. If you loved me, you would not have done this." Leia's eyes filled up with tears. "What about everything we have created together? Are you really willing to throw everything away?" I stared at her for a long time, seeing not the woman I'd loved for years, not a woman I'd loved for years, but a stranger, a liar and a cheat. "You threw it away," I replied quietly. "Not me. Now get out." I walked away, ignoring her pleadings and protests. I locked myself in my office and listened as she moved around the house gathering her belongings. I finally heard the front door open and close. Only then did I allow myself to break down and pour another scotch with trembling hands. It was over my marriage, the life I believed I had. All of it is based on lies. However, as the initial shock subsided, another emotion began to take hold: determination. Rebecca may have betrayed me, but I would be damned if I let her ruin everything I had worked for. I took out my phone and dialed Max's number. "Hey," I said when he responded, "I need your help. It is time to go to war." The next morning I awoke early and went straight to Evelyn Green's office, one of the city's top divorce attorneys. I had called on every possible favor to secure an emergency appointment. Mr. Hawthorne described Evelyn as a sharp, featured woman in her 50s who was known for being ruthless and court perfect. She spoke as I entered her office. "I understand you are in need of my services." I nodded and took a seat across from her desk. "My wife has been cheating on me. I want a divorce and I want to make sure she doesn't take me for everything I'm worth." In the meantime, Evelyn's eyebrows rose slightly. "I see. And do you have proof of the infidelity?" I placed Frank's envelope on her desk. "Everything is in there, photographs, videos and phone records. You name it." She opened the envelope and scanned the contents with a practiced eye. She murmured, "This is good. Very good. It definitely strengthens our position. So what should we do now?" I asked. Evelyn leaned back in her chair and fixed me with a steely gaze. "Now, Mr. Hawthorne, we are preparing for war. Your wife will fight this. Make no mistake, she will try to paint herself as the victim, claiming emotional neglect, maybe even abuse." I started to protest, but she raised a hand. "I'm not saying it is true. I believe this is what she will try. We need to be prepared for anything." I nodded slowly. "Whatever it takes. I'm not going to let her walk away with more than she deserves." Evelyn gave a small predatory smile. "I had hoped you'd say that. Now let us discuss strategy for the next hours." We discussed every detail of my marriage and finances. Rebecca Evelyn's case was thoroughly investigated. She said one last thing. As our meeting ended, "I need you to start the documents. Everything, every interaction with your wife, every expense, every phone call, and anything else that may be relevant to the case. Got it?" I replied while standing up. "Thank you for your assistance, Miss Green." She nodded. "We'll get in touch soon. Mr. Hawthorne, try to keep your cool. I understand it is difficult, but anything you do now could come back to haunt us in court." I left Evelyn's office feeling both exhausted and energized. The reality of what I was about to face was daunting, but I was prepared for the fight. As I drove back to the office, my phone rang. "Max." "Hey," I responded. "What up?" "Just checking in." He said, "How did things go with the lawyer?" I briefed him on the meeting and Evelyn's warnings about what to expect. Max let out a low whistle. "It sounds like things are going to get ugly. Are you sure you're prepared for this?" I replied I don't have the choice. Rebecca made the bed. Now she can lie in it. There was a pause at the other end of the line. "Lucas, I understand you're hurting, but is this the way to go? Maybe if you both cooled down, talk it out." "There is nothing to talk about." I cut him off. "She cheated, Max. She lied to my face for several months. I am done." He exhaled. "Okay. Man, I just hate to see it like this. But whatever happens, I'll have you back." "I know," I replied. My tone is softening slightly. "Thanks. I'm going to need all of the help I can get." I hung up. A sliver of doubt crossed my mind. Was I being overly hasty? Is it too harsh? But then I remembered the photographs Rebecca Elslies, the look on her face. As I confronted her now, this was the only way forward. I arrived at the office hoping to concentrate on work, but my mind kept wandering. I had built this company from the ground up. I put everything I had into it. The thought of Rebecca attempting to take even a small portion of it made my blood boil. My assistant popped in around lunchtime. "Mr. Hawthorne, your wife is here to see you." I tensed and then forced myself to relax. "Send her inside." Rebecca entered, pale and drawn. Her usual well-groomed appearance was gone. "Good. Lucas," she said softly, "we need to talk." I leaned back in my chair, keeping a neutral expression. I believe we said everything we needed to say last night. She shook her head and stepped closer. No, please hear me out what I did. That was a terrible mistake. I am aware of this. However, our marriage does not have to end due to a single stupid decision. I laughed bitterly. One stupid decision. Rebecca. You have been lying to me for months, sneaking around and making a fool of me. That is not one decision. That is a calculated betrayal. I know, she said, tears welling in her eyes, and I'm deeply sorry. Lucas, could we please just talk about this? I made a horrible mistake, but I still love you. I stared at her with nothing but cold contempt. Love? You are unaware of the word meaning. Rebecca. Get out of my office. We will communicate through our lawyers from now on. Lucas, please. Now, I said with a low voice. Rebecca flinched, turned and fled the office. I sat back in my chair and took deep breaths to calm myself. I could not let her get to me. I needed to stay focused, stay strong. My phone broke a text from Frank. I got more information. Meet tonight. I responded quickly. 8 p.m. The usual place. The rest of the day dragged by. I buried myself in work, attempting to ignore the persistent ache in my chest by the time I left the office. I was exhausted yet determined. Frank was waiting in our usual booth in the back of the dimly lit bar. He nodded as I slid across from him. What do you have? I asked without preamble. Frank leaned forwards, his voice low. It's worse than we expected. Lucas, your wife, and this guy named Oliver. They have big plans. I felt my stomach drop. What do you mean? Frank stated that he has been monitoring the communalians. They are talking about framing you for something domestic abuse. Perhaps something that will ruin you socially and financially. I clenched my fists beneath the table. Those scumbags. Have you got proof? Frank nodded. Slide a USB drive across the table. It is all there, texts and emails. Conversations are recorded. They're becoming reckless, confident. They don't believe you suspect anything. I took the drive and pocketed it. My mind raced. Thank you, Frank. Keep digging. I want to know every move they make. I left the bar. I've made a decision. It was time to go on a fence sale I hate with her boy toy. They thought they could destroy me. They didn't know who they were dealing with. The following morning I called Evelyn. I need to move quicker. I told her they were planning something big. Understood, she responded crisply. I will have the divorce papers drawn up today. In the meantime, begin documenting everything. Lucas. Be careful. Do not give them any ammunition to use again against you. I spent the next few days in a state of high alert. Every interaction with Rebecca was carefully managed and recorded. I watched her try to provoke me, pressuring me into saying or doing something she could use against me, but I remained calm and attached. Everything came to a head. On Friday night I arrived home late from work to find Rebecca and Oliver in our living room. The sight of them together in my house made my blood boil. What the hell is this? I let out a howl. Rebecca stood up, her eyes wide with false innocence. Lucas, I didn't expect you to be home so early. Oliver simply stopped by to say that. I cut her off. I understand exactly what is going on here. Oliver stood up and moved slightly in front of Rebecca. Look, man, there's no reason for things to turn ugly. We are all adults here. I laughed bitterly. Adults? Is that considered sneaking around behind my back planning to frame me? Rebecca gave a gasp. Can you be framed? Lucas, what exactly are you talking about? I spat. Don't play dumb. I know everything in the affair. Your little attempt to accuse me of abuse. Did you actually think I was that stupid? Oliver's expression hardened. You're not sure what you're talking about. Oh, I believe I do. I said, taking out my phone. In fact, I have proof. Do you want to hear it? I played a recording of Rebecca and Oliver talking about their plan. Rebecca's face turned pale, while Oliver's flushed with anger. "Have you been spying on us?" Rebecca screeched. "Damn right. I did," I responded coldly. "That's a good thing. I did now get out of my home. Both of you, before I contact the police." Oliver grabbed Rebecca's arm. "Let on. God, his is not over. Hawthorne." I watched them leave with a mix of rage and vindication. It was not over. Definitely not. But I had won the round. The following few weeks were a blur of legal meetings and strategic decisions. Evelyn was worth every penny. Rebecca and Oliver's attempts to discredit me or gain leverage were ruthlessly dismantled. I threw myself into work, determined not to let this situation affect my company. But it was difficult, especially since Max kept trying to persuade me to talk things out with Rebecca. "I'm telling you, Lucas," he said one night while drinking, "maybe you could just sit down with her and work things out." I cut him off. "There is nothing to work out. Max, she made her decision. Now she has to deal with the consequences." Max sighed and shook his head. "I hate to see you like this, man. You're not asleep. You barely eat. Is it actually worth it?" I looked at him, feeling a twinge of suspicion. Why was he so interested in me reconciling with Rebecca? "It is worth everything," I replied firmly. "I will not let them win. I will not let them take what I had built." As I exited the bar that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more going on than I knew. I needed to be cautious. I couldn't trust anyone, including my oldest friend. The final blow arrived a week later. Rebecca, desperate and cornered, filed a police report accusing me of domestic violence. She arrived at the station with bruises, telling a story of years of control and violence. But I was prepared. I had recorded every interaction we had since I discovered the affair. Hidden cameras in our home captured Rebecca's attempts to provoke me. While I responded calmly, the police presented overwhelming evidence of Rebecca's DEC. I had no choice but to end the investigation. Rebecca was charged with submitting a false report. As I left the police station, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was over. I had won. But as I drove home, a new determination came over me. Winning was not enough. Rebecca, Oliver, and anyone else involved in this scheme had to pay, and I was going to make certain they did, regardless of what it took. The morning after Rebecca's failed attempt to frame me, I entered my office with renewed determination. Sarah, my assistant, hurried after me, holding a stack of papers in her arms. "Mr. Hawthorne, the divorce papers are ready for your signature," she said, placing them on my desk. I picked up a pen with a smile on my face. "Perfect timing. Sarah, let us get this over with." As I signed my name, I felt a sense of closure. This was at the end of my marriage, the beginning of my vengeance. At least delivered to Rebecca immediately. I instructed Sarah to contact Evelyn on the phone. "We need to move quickly within an hour." Evelyn was sitting across from me. Her expression was equally fierce as mine. "We have them on the ropes, Lucas," she said. "Now it's time to land the knockout blow. What are our next steps?" I leaned forwards. My voice called. "I want to strike them where it hurts the most. Their money, their reputation, everything." Evelyn nodded with a predatory glint in her eyes. "Leave it to me by the end. They'll have no idea what hit them." As Evelyn departed, my telephone rang. It was Frank. "Lucas, we have a problem." He spoke without preamble. "Your wife and the yoga instructor. They're attempting to access your business accounts." I felt a rush of rage, which was quickly replaced by a calm determination. "Let them try, Frank. In fact, make things easier for them. I have an idea. Over the next few days, I put my plan into action. With the assistance of my team, we created a series of fictitious accounts that appeared to contain large sums of money. Then we waited. It did not take long. Late one night I received an alert on my phone. Someone attempted to transfer a large sum of money from one of the fake accounts. I smiled as I picked up the phone to call Evelyn. "We got them." I said, "It's time to spring the trap." The next morning I entered the conference room where Rebecca and Oliver were waiting. Evelyn was flanked by their lawyers and stood by my side. She holds a stack of documents in her hands. "What is this about, Lucas?" Rebecca demanded. "We are in the midst of divorce proceedings. You cannot simply summon us here." "Oh, I believe you understand exactly what this is about." I cut her off coldly. "You made a small attempt to embezzle from my company last night." Oliver Ped and Rebecca's eyes widened in fear. "I'm not sure what you're talking about," she stammered.
I nodded at Evelyn,
who started distributing documents. "These are the records from your attempted transfer," I explained, along with a history of your unauthorized access to company accounts. "Could you explain?" Their lawyers appeared distraught. Rebecca and Oliver exchanged panicked glances while quickly scanning the documents. "This is all a misunderstanding," Oliver explained, but I raised a hand to silence him. "Save it," I snapped. "Here's what will happen. Rebecca, you are going to sign these papers agreeing to a divorce settlement that will leave you with nothing. Oliver, you're going to disappear. If either of you tries to fight this, I will file charges of attempted embezzlement. Are we clear?" Rebecca burst into tears while Oliver appeared to be sick. Their lawyers huddled together and whispered furiously. Finally, Rebecca's attorney spoke up. "We will need time to review these documents. Do you have an hour?" I replied firmly. "I recommend you use it wisely." They filed out of the room. I turned to Evelyn. "Make sure everything is airtight. I want this completed by the end of the day." Evelyn nodded with a satisfied smile on her face. "Don't worry, Lucas. They do not stand a chance." True to my word, by the evening the divorce was finalized. Rebecca fled with only the clothes on her back, while Oliver slunk away, his reputation in tatters. I should have felt Maxios. Instead, I felt hollow and empty. Something was still not right. That feeling was confirmed the following day when I received a call from Frank Lucas. "You won't believe this," he said, his voice tense. "I've discovered something big. It is about Max." I felt my stomach drop. "What about him?" "He's been involved from the beginning." Frank said he's been assisting Rebecca and Oliver. "And there is more. He has been embezzling from your company for years." The world appeared to tilt on its axis. Max, my oldest friend, my business partner. I could not believe it. Didn't want to believe it. But Frank presented the evidence. I felt a cold rage rise within me. The trail went deeper than Rebecca's previous actions. "What would you like to do?" Frank asked. I took a deep breath. "I'm steeling myself." "Schedule a meeting me. Max and the board don't explain why I want to see his face when I confront him." The next day, I sat at the head of the conference table watching the board members come in. Max was the last to arrive. He had a confused expression on his face. "Lucas, what is this about?" he asked, as he took his seat. I stood up slowly. My gaze was fixed on Max. "It's all about trust. Max, loyalty, things I thought you understood." Max furrowed his brow. "What exactly are you talking about?" I nodded at my assistant, who started distributing folders to each board member. "These documents detail years of embezzlement from our company, with funds siphoned off to offshore accounts. Can you guess who is on those accounts?" Max's face lost color as he flipped through the fold. "Adrian. I can explain." "Save it." I cut him off cold. "I trusted you, Max. You were like a brother to me, and all this time you have been stealing from me. Conspired with my wife to destroy me." The board members muttered in surprise, glaring at Max with a mix of rage and disgust. Max stood up. His eyes were wild. "You do not understand. Lucas, I had no choice. Rebecca." I said, "Save it." I repeated, my voice like I You're finished here, Max. The board will vote to remove you immediately, and then you'll hear from my lawyers. As security led a protesting Max out of the room, I turned to address the board. I apologize for this inconvenience. Rest assured, steps are being taken to recover the stolen funds and prevent similar incidents from happening again. The meeting ended and I went back to my office feeling exhausted. The betrayal seemed an ending. Is there anyone I could trust? My phone broke a message from an unknown number. We need to discuss Rebecca. Max and the truth you do not know yet. I stared at the message, a mix of curiosity and exhaustion sweeping over me. Who could it be and what truth were they discussing? As I considered my next step, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. The game had changed the stakes. Rose, but I was prepared. Whatever happened next, I'd face it head on. Because one thing was obvious in this world of lies and betrayal. The only person I could truly trust was myself. I sat in my office staring at the message on my phone. A meeting with Eli Grant, the journalist who had been posing as Oliver, was scheduled for noon. My thoughts raced with possibilities. What new revelations awaited me? At exactly 1200, my assistant ushered in a man I barely knew. The carefully cultivated yoga instructor was no longer present. Look. In its place stood a sharp-eyed professional dressed in a crisp suit. Mr. Hawthorne. Eli said, holding out his hand. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me. I shook his hand firmly. Let on. Skip the greetings. Mr. Winter. You mentioned that you had information for me. No one nodded, as they took their seat across from me. I've been looking into corruption and infidelity among the city's elite for months. Your wife and Max were only the tip of the iceberg, and you thought pretending to be her lover was the best way to gather information. I inquired, my tone icy. It wasn't my first choice, Eli admitted, but it worked. I discovered a web of deceit that extends far beyond your personal situation. I leaned back in my chair. I am listening. Eli took out a thick file. I am willing to give you exclusive rights to my story. In exchange, I want your protection from any potential consequences. Why me? I asked. My voice sounded suspicious. Because you are the wrong party here, Mr. Hawthorne, and because you have the resources and influence to ensure that this story is published. I pondered his offer for a long time on one condition. The article primarily discusses Rebecca and Max's betrayal. The rest can be considered background. Eli hesitated and then nodded. Agreed. We spent the next few hours working out the details. By the time Eli left, I had a clear picture of how widespread the corruption in our social circle was, and I knew exactly how I was going to apply this information. The next morning I scheduled an emergency board meeting as members filed in. I could see the confusion on their faces. Gentlemen, I began after everyone had taken their seats. I've summoned you because we have a situation that requires immediate attention. I explained the basics of Eli's investigation, watching a shock and disbelief spread throughout the room. Mr. Hawthorne, a board member, spoke. Are you saying our company was unknowingly involved in these activities? I nodded yes, based on Max's actions. But we have an opportunity here to move ahead of the story and position ourselves as victims rather than perpetrators. Another board member leaned forwards. What do you propose? I promise complete transparency. We fully cooperate with the investigation. We open our books clean house and take this opportunity to rebrand ourselves as a symbol of corporate integrity. The room erupted in discussion. I let them argue for a few minutes before raising my hand to signal silence. I understand your concerns, I replied, but believe me, this is our best move. Whether or not we cooperate, the story will break this way. We have control over the narrative. By the end of the meeting, the board members had nodded their heads in agreement. One after another, we had a plan in place. The following few weeks were a blur of activity. We hired an independent editing firm to thoroughly review our books. Any employee even remotely related to Max's schemes was fired. We implemented new transparency policies and ethical guidelines, and throughout it all, I collaborated closely with Eli, shaping the story that would soon shake the city to its core. The day the article was published, I braced myself for the consequences, but I didn't need to worry. The public responded overwhelmingly in our favor. My phone rang non-stop with calls from clients and business partners expressing their support and admiration for how we handled the situation. Our stock price, which had taken an initial hit, has recovered stronger than ever. Rebecca and Max's reaction was swift and merciless. They became paras overnight, shunned by the very social circles they used to dominate. My assistant buzzed me while I was in my office reviewing the most recent round of positive press coverage. "Mr. Hawthorne, there's a woman here to see you. She says she is your sister." I froze. Sophia. I hadn't seen or spoken with her in years. "Send her inside, send her inside," I said. After a moment of hesitation, the door opened, and there she was. Sophia, looking older and tougher than I remembered, but unmistakably my younger sister. "Hello, Lucas," she said with a cool voice. "It has been a while." I stood up slowly. "Sophia, what are you doing here?" She walked deeper into the office, her gaze taking in the trappings of my success. "I saw the article. That's quite the story. Is that why you are here?" I asked to look at the family scandal. Sophia's eyes flashed. "I'm here because Rebecca contacted me. She is desperate. Lucas, she has nowhere else to turn." I laughed bitterly. "And you thought I would. What, will you welcome her back with open arms?" "Of course not," Sophia snapped. "I came to warn you. She's not finished. Lucas. She is plotting something." I sat back down, suddenly exhausted. "Allow her to try. I've beaten her at every turn so far." Sophia leaned forwards. Her voice was urgent. "You do not understand. I've known about her affair with Max for several months." I kept quiet and hoped. "What are they hoping for?" I demanded, hoping it would result in Max's downfall. She admitted I've got my own score to settle with him. I stared at her. A new wave of betrayal has swept over me. "You knew all along and didn't say anything." Sophia was gracious enough to show her shame. "I was wrong. I see it now. But Lucas, there is more to this story than you realize." Just then my phone received a text message from an unknown number. "Meeting. Now you have an office. It's time to reveal the truth." I showed the message to Sophia. Her face turned pale. "It's Rebecca. She's on her way here." "Good." I said, "It's time to put an end to this." Rebecca stormed into my office in mere minutes. Max is trailing behind her. They both appeared haggard. "Desperate, Lucas," Rebecca began, but I cut her off. "Save it," I snapped. "I don't want to hear any more of your lies." "It is not a lie," Max interjected. "There's something you should know." Sophia, step forward. Let them speak. "Lucas, I believe we all need to hear this." I looked at all three of them. These people had betrayed me so profoundly. Part of me wanted to throw them away to finish with all of this, but a larger portion required answers. "Fine," I replied coldly. "Talk." What followed was a complex web of revelations. Sophia admitted to having an affair with Max years ago, which led to our estrangement. Rebecca admitted that her initial interest in me was purely financial, but she claimed to have come to love me. Over time, Max, more broken than I'd ever seen him, was laid bare the full scope of his embezzlement and manipulation. As they talked, I felt a strange calm come over me. These people, whom I once loved and trusted, had caused me a great deal of pain. But as I sat here listening to their pathetic justifications, I had a realization. I was free of Rebecca's manipulation, from Max's phony friendship, from the weight of Sophia's unspoken resentment, free of the doubts and suspicions that had haunted me for so long. As they finished speaking, all three looked at me, expectantly waiting for my response. "Maybe I'll forgive you." I stood up. slowly shifting my gaze from one to the other. Is this all? I inquired, my voice free of emotion. Rebecca stepped forward. There are tears in her eyes. Lucas, please, we can start over. I understand I have hurt you. But no, I replied firmly. We cannot start over. Rebecca, there is no more. There hasn't been in quite some time. I turned to Max. You're my best friend. I entrusted you with everything. And this is how you repay their trust. Max opened his mouth to speak, but I raised a hand. Don't. There's nothing you can say to make this right. I finally looked at his. Sophia, you are my sister and you kept it from me. All of it. I apologize, she whispered. I believed I was protecting you. I shake my head. You were protecting yourself. Just like always. I walked to my office door and opened it. Lucas, Rebecca pleaded, I want you all out of my office. My company and my life. Do not do this. I met her gaze steadily. It's already finished. Goodbye, Rebecca. They filed out one by one and Sophia passed me. She paused. What are you going to do now? She asked softly. I looked at her with a mixture of sadness and resolve. I'm going to live my life on my own terms, without any of you. The door closed behind them, leaving me alone, but for the first time in months, I felt completely at ease. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into my work with renewed zeal. The company thrived under my leadership. Our reputation for integrity attracts new clients and partners. I also established a foundation to help others who had been the victims of betrayal and financial abuse. It felt great to give back, to transform my pain into something positive. One sunny afternoon I was walking through the city park. As I walked along the path, lost in thought, I literally ran into someone. Oh, I'm very sorry. A woman's voice spoke. I looked up and saw a pair of friendly eyes and a warm smile. No, that was my fault, I replied by returning her smile. I wasn't looking where I was going. We got to talking before I knew it. An hour had passed. Her name was Sarah, and she was refreshingly straightforward and down to earth. As we parted ways, I felt a sense of something I hadn't felt in a long time. I hope I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in ages, I was excited to find out. Later that day I stood in my office, overlooking the city I had helped build. I felt a sense of calm wash over for me. I'd lost a lot, this was true, but I had gained something much more valuable. I had regained myself. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode of the story, please give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe to get notifications for updates.